Hello, hello. Welcome, everyone. Welcome once again to both sides of the conversation. Welcome to our Sunday chat. We meet here in this virtual space every Sunday at 2 p.m. Pacific time. I am your guest co-host for today, Danielle Tompkins, and it is March and it is Women's History Month, you guys. And so every week this month, we will be spotlighting a woman. And so we'd like to go ahead and spotlight Miss Kamala Harris today. And I'm going to read a little bit about her. Ms. Kamala Harris is an American politician and attorney serving as a 49th Vice President of the United States. She is the United States' first female vice president, the highest ranking female official in the United States history, and the first African American and the first Asian American vice president. A member of the Democratic Party, she served as a United States Senator from California and as the Attorney General from California. She was born right here in the Bay Area in Oakland, California, and Ms. Harris graduated from Howard University and the University of California Hastings College of Law. She began her career in the Alameda County District Attorney's Office before being recruited to the San Francisco District Attorney's Office, and later the City Attorney of San Francisco's office. She was elected District Attorney of San Francisco. She was elected Attorney General of California in 2010 and then re-elected in 2014. Harris has served as the junior United States Senator from California from 2017 to 2021, and as a senator, she advocated for healthcare reform for federal descheduling. So go ahead and just pay homage to Miss Kamala Harris today. And of course, once again, she is our vice president. That's another accomplishment. So once again, I'm your co-host, Danielle Tompkins, but we have the founders of both sides of the conversation here and my co-hosts for today, and they're going to go ahead and introduce themselves.
I'm the co-founder and co-host of both sides of the conversation, Rico Hamilton. We also got
John Henry, co-founder of both sides of the conversation.
Wonderful. So everyone, I'm going to go ahead and kick the community standards to you today. As you guys know, both sides of the conversation is providing a safe and honest space for open conversation. So please be respectful of that. Be respectful of the panelists and hosts and participants. Healthy debates and conversation are encouraged. Don't personalize anything with anyone. Name calling, bullying, shaming, or trolling will not be allowed here. Your perspective is yours. It's not a prescription. You don't have to agree, but please show respect. Creating an open dialogue for healing and education is what we do here. Also, I want to remind you of some of our housekeeping rules. So for some of you guys that are joining us on our Facebook page, you can interact with us there as well as our YouTube channel. Please go to our YouTube channel and our website to interact with us. Well, go ahead and enjoy the show.
All right, Danielle, you want to go ahead and read the bios of our first guest? You want to go ahead and introduce them?
Yes. So our first guest joining us today is Mr. Jason Bell. Jason Bell is a regional director of Project Rebound. Mr. Bell has a rich history of working with the adult prison and jail population, but has taken on the rewarding responsibility of being a mentor to both adults and youth in and from the criminal legal system. He played a part in the establishment of San Francisco's Safe Communities Reentry Council, and he has served as a district of Project Rebound in San Francisco State University for 10 years and has facilitated educational empowerment classes in the local county jails for 8 years. In 2016, he has phased into a new regional directorship that entails directing the progressive steps towards setting Project Rebound like programs on 8 additional California state universities. Please welcome Mr. Jason Bell.
Hello, everybody. Thank you for having me. I'm looking forward to it. Great conversation.
Thank you. Thank you for being here. And our next panelist is Mr. Anthony J. Wilson. Anthony J. Wilson is an outreach worker. He is a positive outreach work for those in the community and helps those that have become a victim of corrupt criminal jail system. Please welcome Mr. Anthony Wilson to the show.
I want to thank you for having me, and I look forward to the problems that we have in our criminal justice system and prison reform and see what solutions we can come up with.
Thank you. Our next guest and panelist is Mr. Tyrone Mullins. Tyrone Mullins is a Black business owner and co-founder of Green Streets and Fillmore Square. Tyrone Mullins is a 36-year-old small business owner from San Francisco, and he's also the co-founder of Green Streets and Fillmore Square. Tyrone has been acknowledged for the Champions of Change Award and Environmental Serviceman of the Year, and is also a graduate of Stanford University Project Remade. Is Mr. Tyrone Mullins in the building?
I think he's not here. We can move on.
He's going to go ahead and join us later. We also have Ayula. Miss Ayula is a rehabilitation services coordinator. Ayula works full-time as a rehabilitation services coordinator with the San Francisco Sheriff Office. She's also volunteers 2 to 4 times a week at San Quentin Prison pre-COVID. Born and raised here in San Francisco, Ayula Mitchell has spent more than 3 decades working in the punishment system as a fierce advocate for those impacted by the punishment system. Ayula has a very unique perspective on men and women, the needs of those coming home from incarceration, and is someone who has worked so closely with those behind the walls. We want to thank you and welcome Ms. Ayula to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm really looking forward to today's dialogue.
All right. With that being said, Rico, we could go ahead and everybody's been introduced. Just so everybody know, we do have a couple other panelists that's going to be joining us a little late, but we're going to go ahead and kick off the conversation and get started with this prison reform for everybody that don't know. Rico, you want to go ahead and let's open it up and kick it off?
Well, definitely, I always got a good question for us all, right? So, I mean, my question is, when we talk about prison reform, my question to everyone, the panelists, even John, if you wanted to chime in on it, is where does the school to pipeline, where does that play in this whole reform? And then also restorative justice practices and how they're being practiced within the prison systems. How does, if we're talking about reform, if you had it your way, how would it be framed? And if you can just if you got one thing, or if you have a whole order on how you can do it, how would that look when we talk about prison reform? Because I know that we all can go a bunch of places with it. So I kind of just want to hear, based on your expertise, where would a person kind of fall in when you talk about prison reform?
And anybody could jump in. Who want to go first?
I guess I can dive in if it's all right.
Go ahead, Jason.
I know one thing. I know we all as a collective, we got to really decide what this whole system is designed for. Because what happens oftentimes I've found is depending on who you ask, you get different answers. I mean, some it could be purely retribution. Some they use the public safety mantra. Oftentimes, keeping the dangerous people away from the good people. And then some you might hear more of the rehabilitation portion of it. But I mean, if we have this system that we're dumping in, what is it, last year, $81 billion into, we need to figure out exactly what it stands for. So it's one thing for consistently, I would have to say. That's a huge piece of it, figuring that out in point blank and drawing the line in the sand.
Anybody else want to jump in? Ayula, Tony?
Well, this is Tony. With me being part of the criminal justice system, what I've seen with the prisoner pipeline is that they are already preparing our kids for prison. You have what we call officers or security in the school. If you know about the prison system, what oversees those in prison is officers. And so that's one of the things that they're putting in their minds already, that they have to be governed by some form of authority that's in a legal field, as far as an officer or as a correctional officer.
Ayula, you want to jump in there?
Sure. One thing that was mentioned was the school to prison pipeline, and the brother Tony talked about having officers in school and what that does to our children psychologically. I feel strongly that we can't talk about the school to prison pipeline without including the foster system to prison pipeline. We have to unpack the multitude of systems that people are engaged with and oftentimes harmed by before they even touch the punishment system. So when we talk about reform, we're really talking about, in my opinion, remodeling. When you remodel something, you completely tear it apart so that only the frame is there, and then you make it anew. Reform indicates to me that there was something functioning properly in the first place, when we know that's just not true with our punishment system.
Wow, great information. To everybody watching on YouTube and our Facebook page, you guys can have live interaction with us today. If you want to go ahead, throw comments in on our YouTube or on our Facebook page. If you got questions, we're going to throw it out there. I just want to jump in there and just say, hey, this has been in the Black and brown community an ongoing issue. We've been knowing for years how the mass incarceration, the bills that's been put in place has impacted our community. There's a lot of people that's outside of the community don't understand how does it work and how does it impact us. I know last week we had Karen Fletcher on here, the chief adult probation for San Francisco, talking about how probation has played a part in this mass incarceration. We know parole. We know just the economical and social issues that we have in our communities when it comes to money, when it comes to opportunities and access, this equity thing that everybody's talking about. But now that we're kind of bringing it to the light, there's multiple organizations all across the United States bringing these topics up, and I think the biggest thing that I'm trying to figure out is how do we bridge the gap and we unite the community so that our allies and people who don't really understand what's going on, they get a part of it. And I think Van Jones had a great a segue to a question that he was saying. Well, first of all, one of the issues he was saying is Black folks have too much history and not enough future, and our allies have too much future and not enough history. So with that being said, how do we, as Black and brown community, we understand the history part, but how do we get our counterparts to understand the history, where it's taking us, the things that's been put in place, how it affected us, and then how do we change it? That's where we need to hone in at, because we know those are the things that's really going to impact this change and get community involved. So can you guys speak to that? Because I think we know where we've been. How do we as a community move forward? And how do we get our allies that's already forward, reach back and understand the history so that we can have a better dialogue and a faster way to come up with a resolution? Anybody
Well,
can.
well, I see how Yola, she came on, but with our program, the Fresh program, we come from Romans 12:2, and our motto is be not conformed to this world, but renewed by the transforming of your mind. So the part we really focus on is the changing in your mind, the way you think. And so what you was just discussing earlier was how can we stop having so much history and then focus on what we can have in our futures. So a lot of times we have been taught or educated in a form that this is all we have is a history of slavery, project, unwed mothers, fatherless homes. So that's what we've been taught. So what we try to do is we try to get those individuals in our community to come together and show them that, hey, this is your past doesn't determine your future. So we start here from this day, and then we educate them on finances. We educate them on parenthood. We educate them on family living and things of that nature. And so they see that there's more to them than just their history.
Right, I agree with you on that. We definitely have to educate, but we understand that there's been a system in place that help perpetuate that information to the community by the laws, the family court, the way things have been set up when it comes to, this mass incarceration. And yes, today we highlighted Kamala Harris, and we know as she was running, there was a lot of those issues that came out, about her participation in the mass incarceration. And I think this is a great time for her, not only for Women's History Month, but in the first 100 days or the first 6 months of running in office to help reform and fix the system, because there's so many issues within the system that have impacted our community, and we need a fast, rapid response change to really help us. So with that being said, I just think we have to get solution based, but we also have to understand where we were and how do we get there so that everybody understands. Because what I get is a lot of feedback from allies and different people that's not necessarily Black and brown, and they just it's like they just crawl from under the rock and they don't know and they don't understand. So how does that look, and how do we make that connection with our allies? Because we know to have any change, we're going to have allies, so that our people who are watching today who may not understand how it's all impacted can understand, so that we can all work together to fix the problem.
Can I oh, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to mention, when we, again, when we talk about systems and things that are important, education is absolutely important, but not necessarily the formal education that is taught in our schools, because we know historically we have not been taught the truth. And so it's our responsibility to educate ourselves and educate our families and educate our communities about our history predating slavery. It's important that we understand what our roots are, where we come from, and that we are a people who have overcome great obstacles to even survive here to 2021. I think that's an important part of it. But I also, as I said earlier, we have to look at the many systems that we are impacted by and how we can advocate for ourselves within those systems. So take, for example, the school system. Are we involved as parents? Do we have people who can assist us if we don't feel comfortable having conversations with authorities in the school? Do we know that we have a right to review our students' cum folders and protest certain things that may be in there? Do we know our rights as parents at the schools? Do we know our rights as parents or as people with regards to the healthcare system? So I think that a lot of it has to be self-education and educating of each other. We have to have knowledge of self in order to even be able to educate allies. And I have a different perspective on whether or not it's my responsibility to educate my allies.
Jason, you wanted to jump in there?
Yeah, Brother John, I think I might have to push back a little bit on that initial concept that everyone, we all know the history and we all are, kind of gamed up in that regard. Because a lot of folks, man, we've been kind of blindsided by the glitz and the glamour of chasing keeping up with the Joneses and all of the latest technologies and stuff. And a lot of that stuff is kind of bypassed and slipped under the rug, I argue, in many regards, on understanding the complexities of history and the direction that maybe we should go, or that could be more beneficial to us all as a people. I think that is kind of our responsibility. We gotta tighten up on our backstroke and cultural competencies and stuff, and stressing the importance of that. But oftentimes we kind of prioritize the folks that are most successful with material gains, opposed to and completely almost void of the richness of history and some kind of a civic responsibility that could benefit us all.
Yeah, I think that's true. Culturally, we've been impacted. We don't really necessarily understand what it looks like to be a successful Black and brown person in our community. I definitely agree with you on that. But again, and that's why this conversation is important to our young people. How do we integrate that information? What steps do we need to take to do that? I know we try to do our part here. Each individual on here are doing their part, but as a community in large, how do we really do this to impact our thing? And I know Rico's big about history, and I believe that we do need a big history lesson for our young kids and young teenage kids coming up, because our school systems have failed us when it comes to African American, Latino history, what it really looks like and what it really was. But again, with the programs, how do we integrate it to get this information so that we could break down the stigmas, the issues, and really understand where we come from and how much time? Because we at a point now where we're moving, and we talked earlier about moving into the future. How do we get this and fast pace it, fast track it? Because if not, we're going to lose another generation of young people to mass incarceration into this prison system.
John, I would say, like, it's really, we talk about prison reform, and then, like, under prison reform, there's a whole bunch of under stuff. So it has to be like more of a holistic approach, and really looking at the approach and trying to figure out, like, what are the different things that we need to do as a race of people in order to uplift ourselves and be in the best position that we possibly can be in. I think that, you know, when I was with Jason Bell at Project Rebound for the time that I was there, and I think that one of the main things that I learned was, even being in those type of settings, a lot of times I was like the most intellectual individuals inside the room, you know what I mean, amongst scholars, right? But I think that a lot of times our people we don't have a Jason Bell always around us, or a Rico around us, or a John around us to help uplift that type of movement, where, you know, even in our culture, we pretend like there's not, you know, the division between people who are in poverty or live in the hood versus the individuals who live uptown, right? Who the individuals who have assimilated, and they kind of, you know, dictate how things should go. And, you know, most people call them, you know, bootlickers or whatever they want to call them. But it's like, how do we look at that and say, you know what, regardless of the way that we grew up, how do we all come together to start restructuring all of the different systems, like, Ayula said, to make it better for our people. Like here in San Francisco, we're talking about 120 million, right? 120 million that's been redirected from the police department to the Black community. And the first place where it's going to go is to nonprofits, right? But my personal opinion, you know, and as a community, we came up with a collective and said, this is what should happen, this is what we should do. But like, what was the what infrastructures are we actually creating, or pipelines we're creating for our own youth success? And a lot of times we know that some of these, you know, nonprofits and some of these places aren't it. You know what I mean? It's not like that, like it's the same business as usual. But like, are we going to commit to a Black private school and making sure our young people are intellectually and know about themselves before they can even go to anybody's school, right? So like, I think it's going to take a holistic approach and trying to figure out like, what are all these different systems, and then how do we tap into them different systems? Like African American males are, in my opinion, the lowest on the totem pole when we really look at it for real. We have the lowest graduation rate of any population. And a lot of that stuff is always ignored. And we talk about everybody else, and we add everybody else to our movements. And we want to, we need these people and those people, when I think that we just need to stick together and say, you know, we got this. We have some brilliant minds, and we just got to stick together and do what we got to do. And that's just how I look at it. I think that we just add too many people to our movements, and then the movement become about them. You know what I mean? We get our little small victory, then they overtake the whole victory, right? So I just think we just got to figure out, like, what do we really want to do? Because sometimes we be all over the place, and it's really no clear direction on which way we going to go. There's a lot of Black people in Congress. I ain't gonna say a lot, but there are folks in Congress, in the state Senate. We got mayors. We got all these people who represent us. But change is happening, but it's happening at a pace that's so slow. It's like, what are we in the back going to be able to do to push those buttons to force them to create real change?
Yeah. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Rico, you touched on two things that I want to follow up on. You talked about the rate of Black males graduating and that being one of the lowest rates that there are. But let's not start there. We have to go back to when our boys are pushed out of school. We have to start with the over disciplining of our kids. No first grader should be suspended. No first grader should be continuously removed from class. No second grader or third grader should be expelled. So it starts long before they're supposed to graduate from high school, with them being rejected from elementary school, middle school, high school, and then they have these cum folders that follow them that have documented all this behavior. But where are the interventions? Where are the support? Who is asking Johnny, hey, did you have breakfast this morning? Are you acting out for a reason? We're not doing that. And that's part of the problem with the schools, is that we're not doing enough intervention, but we're overly disciplining our children, particularly our boys. And now we're seeing an increase in the discipline of our Black girls as well. The other portion that you said about having Black private schools, and I may have mentioned this when I was on one of your shows before. When I was 13 years old, growing up in San Francisco, the Mirror Youth Summer Program had it was a job, but it was really school. And all summer we were at an African American center where the whole summer we spent learning our history and learning our culture. And again, you have about 50 kids who are learning about themselves, planting seeds. That changed the trajectory of my life. So maybe instead of giving money to nonprofits, maybe we can set up summer programs or after school programs or in school programs or something where we are paying the kids to learn their history. That was a great incentive that summer a long time ago. I don't know what happened to those programs. I agree that what I've seen time and time again is the same organizations are getting the money and they're not doing anything big. And there's certainly, and I've worked with organizations that aren't doing anything at all. And so how do we better fund what we need to do for our own children? Maybe it's not a private school, but maybe it's a summer program where they spend 6 weeks immersed in our culture and our history. Or maybe it's an after school program that lasts for 4 weeks or 6 weeks or whatever. I think we have to be innovative and creative in the approach.
So I just want to say this. So, because I'm about solutions too. I think what we need to start doing is we have a problem in our school district. It has systemically perpetuated our people in different ways, right? So I think one thing that we need to propose is we need 6-day-a-week school. We need school all year round. Because of this pandemic, it has shown us how far the gap of education is with our kids, right? So if we talk about this fast approach and getting things done, we need Saturday school. We need school to be more than 8 hours with after school programs, because we know that our families are being socially impacted. Like you said, some of these kids are not eating breakfast. Some of these kids are not eating dinner. We need to incorporate. It's a lot of money that's going around. We need to make sure that our kids are eating, they're getting the right nutrition, and they're getting the time to interact with each other. So I'm thinking we need to just have school 6 days a week, all year round. And
I'd like to speak on that. Yeah, thank you for that. I would like to speak as an educator. I've been in the education system for around 20 years, and I've worked with our community. And I will say, it's tough. I hear what you're saying, Ayula and John, but as a teacher, an educator, a lot of it falls on the parents, and it's so hard. Like what you're saying, this let's do Saturday school 6 days, have school 6 days a week. Excuse me. Let's go ahead and have more programs and more resources. But who's going to bring them there, and who's going to ensure that they go? Who's going to make sure that these kids? A lot of parents, a lot of times, the students that are the most difficult, you can never get a hold of the parents, and they're minors. They need, there's accountability there, but you can't even get them to even sign off on some certain things. So when you hear our people say it starts at home, it really does, and we know that, and that is a hard pill to swallow, to know that our kids are going to come out the most successful if they come from successful homes, and they don't come from successful homes. So we're trying to reach them at another end. And I'm not saying it's not possible, or they're kids that came out of really bad homes and there were people in the community that opened their arms with love and took them in. It happens. But, the thing is, it really does take some additional supportive resources for families. And, if you are a single mom and you have a lot of kids and a lot is being asked of you, and then the school is being asked a lot of you as well, it takes a toll on your whole mental state. So we need to really support some of these families, and then we need to have family education. Some of these things that we're suggesting are optional, so when they're optional, people don't show up. I think that when a kid is put in a school, especially a great school, I think it should be mandatory before you sign your kids up in that school that parents come to an orientation. And if you want your kid to stay here, you should be able to set aside maybe some time to volunteer or something there, but that we have to keep our parents accountable. And that's just my take on things. We got to get these families involved and these parents, because it's tough. You know,
I would definitely agree with you on that. And you and Rico's touched on about the nonprofits, right? And I love Rico's always approach about the village, right? Part of the village are these nonprofits. We got to hold them accountable too. We know we have families who are on drugs, other mental things that are keeping them from having the capacity to be a parent. But as people in the community, it takes a village. It's going to take all of us. And that's what I think Tony and Jason was speaking to. It's going to take the community. But there is a lot of funding and money going to these organizations, and we have to hold them accountable. We have people like Nate over at SF Rebels who are doing case management. He's already doing some of that work. We have to start thinking about this remodeling and how we're going to help impact our community with these type of brothers, these type of things that's going on. Because if not, we are headed for a major, major, major failure to our young people, and it's going to continue to increase the mass incarceration. It's funding out there. But to Rico's point, to Ayula's point, that's the biggest problem. The adults in our community are the problem, and they are impacting our young people. And we as Black and brown people of the community, we have to stop being the oppressors to our own people, because a lot of times the people in place that are supposed to do the work, make sure our kids get the thing that they need, are not being responsible for doing it. And it's the adults who have to take action. We have to take accountability, but all adults out there, it's our job. We have to be better adults, better community leaders, better advocates for the community, and stand up and be accountable for the resources and the things that are being provided. It's not about, hey, you're a member of the church, so you get the benefits. When benefits come into the community, it's for the community, and we have to make sure that we as adults have the integrity and we have the things that we need to equip to make sure that the community get the resources, and people in the community are held to that standard of leadership and accountability. And that's where it all starts. We could keep putting it here. Yeah, the families. Yes, our families need to take accountability. But again, because we know the issues that we have with drugs and different things in our community, that's why these community leaders, these community organizations should be stepping up, doing what they need. And it's not happening on a large scale. There are a lot of community organizations that are doing well, but we got to get behind those and support them and start holding the ones who are not, and bring them up to the standard. Because in our community, the poverty pimps are coming in more than ever. Especially with all of this money coming in, with defunding the police, reparations, all this money talk. The property pimps are showing up in our community in drones, and they're not doing the things to help impact our community, and we got to call them out. See, our people, one of the issues in our Black and brown community is when it comes to our people doing stuff, we never want to say anything. But when it comes to law enforcement and other people and allies, we complain, we bitch and complain. But it is time for us to take accountability as leaders of the community. When we see people in our community that we know not doing what they need to do, we got to call them out just as well and have that same energy that we have for law enforcement and everybody else. Because this game of like, oh, I see Pastor Deacon over here doing this wrong stuff, but we ain't gonna say nothing because that's the pastor, or we see this executive director or this organization taking advantage of the funds and doing stuff or giving it to their family or not helping everybody in the community, we got to call them out. So when we're talking about accountability, let's just put it on the parents. Let's put it on everybody in our community, elected officials, community leaders, community organizations, mothers and fathers, the whole system. We as adults have to stand up, call people out, and be accountable. This hush society is nothing. We turn into this castle society. Nobody want to deal with it. We have to deal with it and address it. If not, we're going to be impacted further than where we already at. With
well,
that
I want to interject.
Go ahead, jump in, Tony.
John, I have to interject because what you're saying is so powerful, because that's what we're doing. I'm in the DMV. So we have several organizations that came together down here. We have Fresh, we have Architect of Justice, we have Life After Release, we have Out for Justice, we have the Algebra Project, we got Elevate. All of us came together, created what they call the Maryland Juvenile Restoration Coalition, where we came together as impacted individuals to make the change that needs to be made. We keep our delegates, our elected officials accountable. I teach a curriculum called Knowing Your Rights and Engaging in the Political Process, where I teach youth ages 11 through 19 how to exercise their 4th, 5th, 6th Amendment rights when they encounter law enforcement, so it doesn't turn deadly or physically or verbally confrontational. I teach them about the political process, where they learn how to vote, what age they can register, all those other things. What you said is what we're doing in the DMV. I like what Ayola said, because she was saying how to get everybody involved. And what happens here is this right here. I go to the highways and the byways to get those who are most affected to come and be a part of this change. You already have those elite ones who got nice houses, get a nice job, and all those things. They're not really impacted. They're in another level. You got those in those urban communities who living all paycheck to paycheck, getting WIC, getting social service, getting some type of assistance from the state. So you have to get them to understand they are the ones that really need to be making this change, because they are the ones that are affected, not the ones who living in a $500,000-$600,000 home, who's getting $200,000-$300,000 a year at a job. So that's what we need to do. Let them see that they can come out of this situation that they are, but they have to be a part of that solution and be a part of that fight to bring that change and keep those individuals accountable for what for the change that we're trying to make.
I wanted to go back for a moment to, first of all, Danielle, thank you for your service in the field of education. When we talk about holding systems accountable, if we're going to have a great educational system, we got to start paying teachers. I taught for 8 years. And the reason why I stopped teaching was because I got a divorce and became a single mom, and I couldn't afford to be a teacher anymore. And so that's another system that has to be held accountable. We want our kids educated, and we're not paying teachers livable wages, particularly if you live in the Bay. I don't know how you can afford to be a teacher here in the Bay. So that's another system. When I was talking earlier about holding systems accountable, we need to look at how can we pass legislation that makes districts pay teachers more money. We're not going to get the cream of the crop if we're not paying livable wages. And we need more teachers who look like us and who are from our communities, who have the similar cultures and backgrounds and things like that. I'm proud to say that 2 of my own children are teachers. One is a teacher in Antioch, and my daughter is a first grade teacher in New Orleans. And I can go on a whole tirade about the lack of support that the teachers are getting in the pandemic, but that's a whole different conversation. But we need to look at how can we pay teachers more money, because they have one of the most important jobs ever.
Thank you for that. Thank you for that. And what you said is exactly right. A lot of teachers, especially when we're teaching children in the inner city, a lot of us are just burnt out. I remember the first year I taught full time, they stuck me in a classroom with students that had all emotionally disturbed issues. I mean, that what I went through was just ridiculous. And we didn't have enough. I was constantly calling security because kids were kicking. But I mean, it was tough. It was tough. And, I didn't have enough training or enough support in it. And on top of that, like you said, they weren't paying me a livable wage. I mean, most teachers have roommates. If they don't have roommates, they're married and they have a partner, and you just can't survive on your own. So you're putting all this time and energy and work in, you're not being able to just live the life that you want. So most people, the turnover rate is high in education. And, aside from the teachers, you need the support staff. The support staff are getting paid less than the teachers. So these are your para-educators and everything that come on, that take those kids that are in that lower reading group and work with them one-on-one. And it's hard. A lot of them, you don't have enough. A lot of times you need one-on-one for kids that have really, high needs and things like that. We don't have enough of those either. So like she said, that our systems are broken. Our education system is broken. And yes, one solution is to definitely pay teachers more, because there's not enough. Not enough.
So, and I just want to add one more thing to that, revamping teacher education programs, because nothing I learned in the credential program prepared me to teach at Byron Boys Ranch or juvenile hall. And so we have to really look at these archaic systems that train teachers, but they don't train teachers to work with the population that you spoke of, or the population that I just spoke of.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Rico.
Yeah, no, I mean, since we're on the schools, and I strongly believe that the pipeline is so real. I fell victim to the pipeline. I was someone who, did 3 years of incarceration. But at the end of the day, I think a lot of it is like looking at that curriculum, because I think a lot of times like we don't talk about it. We just kind of be like it's a pipeline, and we talk about a lot of the other stuff that's kind of more visible, like the security and and we can go on and on with the list of things that they kind of have that's more mind plan as it relates to this pipeline. But the curriculum, like when we look at the curriculum, and you look at a curriculum of a private school, right? Because I've gone to Stewart Hall a bunch of times and done some work with them, and when you look at their curriculum, it's really creating a pipeline for whatever those young people want to do. It's not saying, in the 12th grade, what do you want to be in life? They've already had an idea of what they want to do, and they're actually pushing them in that direction. They're learning how to code already. They're learning like whatever's innovative now, they're already learning it. When our youth is years behind and they're not, and it's not, that's why I always advocate for private school. That's something more private for us, where we're saying, if we got a young person and they want to be the best construction worker in the world, who are we to say that that's not that person innovation? Why we don't have a class for that? Like why they take away wood shop? Why they take away home ec? Why they take away certain things that our young people might be good at? You know what I mean? So like looking at their curriculum, because I think their curriculum is kind of garbage in my opinion, and that's just my own personal opinion. I don't think that it pushes our kids in a direction where they are enthused to be anything. It's not. To me, it doesn't help them in any way. Yeah, you do have those who are easily or who can do it because they have the parent support and all this other stuff. But we have a huge system that plagues our people every single day. And those mothers who have to work every single day and don't have the time to really invest in going to the school and do all this other stuff. Like, to me, it's like it's up to us to help create a different narrative. And that narrative is like how do we create pipelines where our young people are being exposed to careers that they want to be in, like early. Like if you got a young person who want to be an officer, why there isn't an officers program that's in high school that pipeline them directly into that field? Why isn't like all this stuff already pre-done? Like why do they have to go off to college in order for them to be successful? And we know that that's not even true. I know a bunch of people who got degrees and can't even get a job right now. So like, how are we getting our young people into those positions? Because I think that's the part that kind of where the pipeline plays its most, because we're learning American history. We learn European history, but we never learn the history of ourselves. So all the time, all day in school, our children from kindergarten to high school, all they learning is about Eurocentric things. And then you want me to invest. I can't invest in that. Me personally, I know when I was a kid, I wanted to be a dancer. That's all I wanted to do. So when the teacher told me I was acting out while we was learning about Europe, Hitler, all this different stuff we was learning, the Odyssey, all that, I didn't want to hear about that. I didn't care about it. And I told him, I don't want to hear this. I just want to dance. I went to School of the Arts. All I want to do is dance. You have to learn this. Why? I've never in my life got a straight answer. Even the young people who still pose the question today, 30 years later, they still don't have the answer for them. So I'm confused on why they have to learn that stuff if it doesn't benefit them in no type of way.
Well, I think you hitting on something, Jason. I'm gonna give you come up here. I think you hitting on something, Rico, and this is what all this reform talk is going around the country about. And I think reform from an educational standpoint is we have to have a more realistic approach of what education looks like for living day to day, right? Because you go, like you said, you go and learn all these different math and different things, and you really don't apply that stuff to day to day. Financial literacy is something that we need to really consider. We're teaching kids about different things in economics, but it doesn't impact them in day-to-day real life, right? We need to teach kids how to use a debit card, how to balance a checkbook, how to do real things. So I think it's a whole curriculum change that needs to happen. But I think also, since we're talking about prison reform, I think Tony or Jason said it earlier, it's about 83 billion. I was on a call the other day, and I think it's about 85, 89, 90 billion dollars that's missing from the GDP because all of the people that are impacted with prison records that can't get into this economy. But if we are investing this much money in private prisons, and we know that this prison stuff is not working, we still having problems. part of this refund and reparations should be that we take this money back and we put it back into our school district. We do pay our teachers a higher salary. We do impact the community in that way because these funds need to be diverted because prison is just not working, right? It is not working, and we have to find a way to reallocate this money in a way that is really going to impact us. And I think Danielle and Ayula said it best. We need people who look like us, think like us, and vibe like we vibe because education, the way it's taught, we don't get it. Our kids learn different. I see a bunch of people, teachers in the East Coast, who are using music and arts and different things to educate our people with the basic curriculum core information. And I think that's a start. But we have to think about this reform because we know that there's a lot of dollars going into prison, locking people up. This housing human bodies is it's just costing us, and it's not working. And I know people think that every time somebody do something, we got to lock them up. But again, at 90,000 plus a year to lock somebody up, if we spent a quarter of that to invest back into educating, paying the teachers, getting people in better situations when it comes to health and wellness and things of that nature, I think that's the way we need to be looking. And it's going to take the community and everybody to get behind this movement because, again, our teachers do need to be paid. Our curriculum needs to be changed, and that goes all across the board. And what Ayula said earlier is a conversation we're going to have. I think this capitalism, this classism, this system that's built for us to make money as profits in this country is the biggest cause of what's going on today, and it's causing genocide in our communities. And we got to change that first because it's never going to work if 1% of the population is making all of the money. It's just we got to look at it. We have to, I'm on these calls and everybody's talking about reimagining things, and I think systemically from the top, as a country, we're going to have to look at some of these top level things that are impacting us, and it starts with the way we address our federal judges, the way we appoint seats. This capitalism, how we operate, do business, how we are trading. There's a big change in America that's happening. And if our people don't get it now, just think where we at now is going to be 5 times worse because there's a shift in America that's happening right now. There's a shift in the world when it comes to currency, when it comes to this investment. And this is stuff that we got to deal with because if not, I'm telling you, we're headed down a road that's going to put us another 50 years back.
I have a question. Thank you for that, John. I have a question to the panelists because for me, I almost think it's about the economy. I feel like it's hard for poor people to get ahead. And I feel like people that are the most economically impacted are more likely to go in the system. So I want to pose a question about how do you guys feel about getting rid of all public housing or projects and totally dismantling that and maybe dispersing poor people into every community. Because I know an issue that was going on in San Francisco at one point is for all these new developments to offer, they have to offer, a certain percentage for low income people, right? Or below market rate people. Some people wanted to expand that to at least 50%. So how do you guys feel about dismantling, the economic system by breaking up kind of or dealing with the housing crisis? How do you think that would affect our families? And do you think that would have a positive impact and somehow prevent more of our young people from going into the system?
That's really an interesting question and an interesting concept. I'm not sure. As we were talking about economics, I'm thinking more of, instead of giving all these tax breaks to all these tech companies that are in San Francisco specifically and in the Bay Area generally, taxing them and allocating money to our communities. I don't know that doing away with the projects or low income housing is, what are we going to replace it with, I guess is what the question would become. And in terms of money for education and money for schools, I don't know who on this panel is old enough to remember Proposition 13, which still has the impact today, where the way that the taxes are set up, that the lowest taxes are in the schools that need the most revenue. So when you talk about inequity in education, A lot of it has to do with tax bases, and money's not going into the schools where there are lack of in communities where there's not home ownership, or the home values are lesser than in other communities. So everything in this country is about economics. Everything in this country is about economics. So how do we shift that part of it? Like John Henry said, where the 1% is the wealthiest, and they don't pay and they're not paying the taxes. So we're talking about a complete overhaul of systems. And the reality is, rich folks are going to fight. I mean, they're so in bed with politicians and things like that, that's a fight in and of itself, right? Why is the Amazon dude not paying any taxes? Why are the tech companies not paying any taxes? That's craziness. And so it's such disparity. But I think what you're speaking is correct, Danielle, about the economic challenges that are faced in our communities, and a number of us have talked about that. You know, the truth of the matter is, if I'm a single mom and I'm working 2 jobs to put food on our table and keep a roof over our head, I'm exhausted, and I'm probably not going to come to the parent-teacher conference. And so it's all tied in together. I know that parents aren't, some parents are trifling. We're going to say that. But I also know that, as a single mom who raised 5 kids, worked 2 jobs often, and went to school, exhaustion, but I also had a village, and I also knew the importance of being involved in my kids' school, because they'll be doing some stuff that's not cool if you aren't involved. But there's also kind of a blind trust sometimes that the school's always right, when we know that that's not true. So I just say all that to say that the issues are so complex that we have to get, again, innovative on solutions, but it's all economically based. How can we get more money into the schools, in the lower economic areas? My kids went to schools where they had 2 textbooks, one for at home, one for at school. And if they had a family situation where there were 2 households, maybe it was a divorce or something, they got a 3rd set of textbooks for the second home. And yet I taught in districts where we didn't even have enough textbooks, and we're in there making copies every single morning for our kids. So that's disparity at its finest, and that's still going on today. And why, when we know that our country has money for that?
So I wanted to get Jason in here because Jason had to speak, then Tony, and then we're gonna home back in on this prison thing. But I think what you guys are all saying is true. But Jason, go ahead and jump in, then Tony, and then we're gonna dive back tighter into this prison.
Okay. Yeah, it sounds like I'm listening real intensely on everyone, and I know what it boils down to is it's like 2 levels of this problem, these kind of problems, because one is systematic. There's some systematic things with equity and teacher salaries, as well as some of the stuff that's going on with living situations, and I know you had mentioned closing down the projects, rearranging the projects and kind of dispersing folk. But that's just another form of gentrification. That's actually happening. That's what's going on with Antioch right now. It's a whole bunch of projects disbursement, and without the proper the education in living in those spaces, it just is reshuffling the same issues. So what it really is, the answer is ownership, and people being able to have a home and build equity in a space, not so much just spreading it out in different areas, but in reference to the individual responsibility, that falls on us all. And Rico, you were mentioning that, like, some of the curriculum just wasn't interesting, and hugely with us, we got the innovative minds. You just mentioned being innovative. We really got to have our ear to the streets and change the game, because even on a personal level, I never thought I would be in a position to be able to create curriculum myself. I always, some of that, what's that stuff you have, where you feel like you're not worthy, in a sense. I almost bought into that, But now I'm in a position that, as a youngster being sentenced to 17 years in the California prison system. I never ever thought I would be able to design curriculum in a university, and I'm doing that. I'm teaching curriculum, so I kind of changed the game in respect to the information that I could educate other folks on, and we can all do that. We can do exactly that, and I think we need to be doing more of that. We need to prevent our folks from being landlocked. We need to start getting our folks out of just the U.S. and into different spaces in the world, because the wealthy folks, they do that and they talk about it like it's so common, but many of our folks are afraid to cross the damn bridge, and that's not right. We got to open up the world and open up our vision of how we see things, and I think some of that innovation can come from things like that. But we have a lot of the answers here. Systematic stuff is another issue that we can work on, and working with policy changes can happen too. And there's a lot of groups that are doing that. Cut 50 ARC is doing a lot of that stuff, and we're changing the game in respect to some policies. But the individual stuff, we can, it's closer to us, and we can do it. But we got to, every year we got to make commitments to do just that.
Right. I just want to say one thing before Tony go, and then we'll get Dwayne in there. I know his camera keeps going on and off, but I think he's trying to get on to say something. You guys talking about this innovation thing, and I see Jason. I see by your, I'm not gonna age you, but I can see by the salt and pepper on your chin, you got a little age and wisdom on you. So what I want to say is this, because this is me and Rico's fight here at both sides of the conversation. Another problem that we have in our community, and you hit it on the thing. We have to be able to listen to our young people. But what tends to happen is in our community, with our community leaders, sometimes our elected officials, they hold on to the torch too long. The leaders of the community don't want to pass the torch and let the young people lead. So what happens is we get stuck with these old ideals, how it was for them, and we don't meet the curve of innovation because we're so busy for our self-gratification. And this comes from a lot of the elders and the young people I talk to and work with them. So how do we get the elder gentlemen and the elder women and the elders of the community to be willing to pass the torch and let the young people lead and use the wisdom behind the feet of the young people? Because again, what you're talking about is, and Ayula talked about textbooks, right? Because she's speaking from a time that she was there. We have technology now. Everybody's on email. Books are in iBooks. It's a different form. And if we're not willing as elders of the community to give up the torch, to empower our young people and let them help lead with their understanding of how things are and with the technology they use, that is also part of the problem that's hurting our community from advancing and being innovative. Because when I go to these private schools, let me tell you, everybody has laptops. Everybody's emailing. The young people are leading everything. But you come to our community, all the community leaders want to speak. The kids don't never speak. We have to listen to our young people. We have to let them and trust them because they are intelligent. And I think we don't give them a chance. And I think we do our young people a disservice as elders in the community, not listening to our young people. And we have to start listening to our young people and giving them and boosting their confidence up, teaching them. And a lot of times the elders in our community hold on to the information. They don't want to give it to the young people. And that's part of the adults issue that I'm talking about earlier when it comes to accountability and where we stand at as adults. We have to make a decision as leaders, as men and women of the community. What is going to be our standards when it comes to how we deal with our young people? What are we going to let them see? What are we going to let them be a part of? When do we sit down and let them speak? And we are approaching the time where this change is going to happen. As we transfer in power, it is time for the elders in our community to sit back, get behind and support our young people and let their ideals move us forward in this race. With that being said, go ahead, Tony, and jump into here. I know I'm going off.
That was a perfect segue into what I want to say now, because we just did a lobby day Tuesday with the youth. The youth had made videos that they had given to delegates and senators that were from their district. So that was what we was trying to convey to our youth, is that you have a voice and that you are the next generation. And those individuals who are now in that position need to hear the ideas that you have. And then that can catapult them into becoming and being what they call interns and learning the ropes. So they see these young people say, okay, they have an interest in the change that we need. I'm not going to get real long in that because I'm already doing the work like everyone else is, right? When I started the Fresh program, I told my team, we are going to let the youth talk to us, because as we was growing up as kids, our parents always wanted to talk to us, tell us what we got to do, where we got to go. But they never listened to what we wanted to say. And that's how we get to make the programs become successful, because we listen to our youth. And I want to say this one last part while everyone was talking about someone that put on there, where would they move or something, or where would they live? And I remember listening to a rapper back in the 90s named Big Mike, and he had a CD called Something Serious. And he said something in one of his songs. The lyrics said, how do you think the system is going to help us? The ghetto is where they put us, and the ghetto is where they left us. And I'm gonna leave it like that.
Wow, that was powerful. Just for you guys that's not knowing, Brother Tony coming in from the East Coast. And I think this is important because this issue that we're talking in prison reform, education reform, this is a United States worldwide issue. This is not just a certain sector. And I think also we have to work together because, Tony, you have some things that's going on that's really important and impacting. And we got to use this energy and this information. You know, so many times when people build stuff, they don't want to share the information. They don't want to help. If we truly going to help and impact our community and our people, it's going to take all these powerful organizations to come together, work with each other, share some of this information, because a lot of times with some of the stuff I see is people create things and they don't want to share the information. And that also is a disservice to us, because if we're truly in this for the love of our community and our people, when do we take all hats off and say, we got to impact information and get it to our community? That's what we're committed to here at both sides of the conversation. We want to make sure that our community is intentionally impacted with educational information, things that's going to change the paradigm for our people. And sometimes it takes getting different people who might don't want to do it, but we gotta somehow work together. And that's back to us adults. We got more adults with the issue than our kids, and that's just what it is. It's true. But thank you, Tony, for some of the stuff you're doing. And I'm going to tap in with you, too, outside of this, because, again, you got some things that's going on. And I know for here in the Bay Area, in San Francisco, West Coast, it looks a little different because we are gentrified, and it's not more of a black-led type of area. Whereas, you know, in the DMV, you got a little bit more of us there. So that approach looks a little bit different. But again, just incorporating the information, it could work anywhere. So we just got to keep doing it. Empower the people with information. And we're going to keep doing that. Rico, go ahead and jump in because I know you want to go. And then Ayula. And I don't know where, Tony, go ahead.
I mean, I just wanted to commend everyone on what they were saying. I'm just soaking up so much information, and just, you know, everybody thought is amazing. And I think all these thoughts that we are saying and that we are compiling is like just one big gumbo that, you know, at some point, you know, it all needs to be documented and put into some type of policy, and making sure that we can push our own personal agenda. Back to prison reform, I did kind of just want to, you know, say, you know, I have an idea about, like, you know, I would like to see a prison that's like more formed into like a college institution instead of the typical sales and all that stuff, just kind of being more of a college setting where individuals can actually work off their time by getting educated. So that's just something, an idea that I kind of thought of and would love to see happen. Jason, I don't know if that's already happening. You might know about that, but that's something that I definitely would love to see. Also with the housing, I know that HUD and Section 8 gives a lot of money to families that are disenfranchised. We probably need to reform that and figure out ways on how we hold them accountable to creating equity. They are the same individuals that displaced us. They're the ones that created a lot of gentrification and did a lot of things to our people. So how do we reform even the HUD system, and making sure that they spending all these hundreds and hundreds of $1,000s on families? Now, how do we say, matter of fact, now we want you to put down money, or the money you're going to put down over X amount of time, we want to put that down on a house for a family. And now the family only still pays the same amount, but now they get equity in their own personal home. So I think like we all are on the right page just in terms of the ideas. It's like, now what does the frame actually look like that we're trying to develop for, you know, our people? Because I think that it's a segue, or it's starting from the bottom and working all the way up. I think like we got to talk about the schools, we got to talk about the elders, we got to talk about the free thinkers, and just making sure that we're inclusive with our dialogue. We're inclusive in whatever we're creating, because there are people who feel like they're voiceless, but that have amazing ideas. Because not just young people get muted, it's people who don't have the education that get muted. You know, they're in rooms and they have the ideas, you know, and if they're saying it, no one listened, but then you get the educated person who said the same thing that he said, but say it a little bit differently. Now everybody listening. So I think it's really just like, how do we make it more inclusive and hold on to what everybody is saying? Because we all represent something. We all represent a population within our group, within who we are. Like, I grew up in the hood. Everybody didn't grow up in the hood. So I just can't say the hood perspective is the only perspective. There's a bunch of perspectives. And then how do we hold on to each person's perspective and lift it up and let them know like your voice was really, really, really heard?
Yeah, before we move on to the next person speaking, I just want to say that because I see some information in the chat. For you guys that are watching us on YouTube or in our Facebook page, you can leave comments and ask questions. If you go to YouTube and use the live chat function, or there's a comment function that says live comments or chat, please use it there. We'll get your questions and comments up there, as well as Facebook. If you're on the Facebook page, log into the page. You're watching us live, put the comments in. We'll get them here right here on the screen. And I'll go ahead and pass it over to Rico. What I wanted to say before I pass it on to the next person is you hit it right on the money. There's too much talk in America right now about diversity and equity. Equality. I think for Black and brown communities, the real conversation is about equity and inclusion. And I think those are the two things that we really need to hone in, because we're never going to get the equality we want. And this diversity thing is a ploy just to make it seem like that people are a part of it. So we just want to make sure we keep that in there. And then we got a question up here. Dylan and Helen is saying, how do people get involved? Here, you got these phenomenal people up here. I'm running their information across the stream. I'm glad this person asked this question, because this is one of the most frustrating questions that I get in the community. All these people want to say, I want to get involved. I want to do something. I don't know how to do it. Here at both sides of the conversation, we have a number of volunteer opportunities for you. We need people on all professional backgrounds. You want to get connected with the community? Connect with Ayula. Connect with Tony. Connect with Jason. We all have resources. I'm not saying that it's not a dumb question. I don't want to put it off as that. But again, we put this information out every week. We need support here. We are involved in the community in many ways. We are looking for volunteers to help out. You don't have to necessarily be an advocate or organizer. Maybe you have a special talent. Maybe you're in IT. Maybe you're a developer. We need those support systems. So you could come here and we could connect you to a whole hub of people that need information. The biggest thing in our Black-led organizations across this country is there's no grant writers. We need grant writers. We need people to support us. Where's the grant writers at? If you're an ally out there, you want to help our community, you want to give it, we need some grant writers. We need somebody to help us build capacity and do the things that's going to make us successful. So there you have it. Go to our website, bothsidesoftheconversation.org, and we'll connect you with the people. Because if you have a talent, there's somebody in our community that needs you, and we'll connect you with them.
Yes, and please check out our YouTube channel, you guys. I'm putting our resources in the YouTube channel. So all of our panelists here, you can get in touch with them. Go ahead and take a look at their pages. All their social media handles are in that YouTube. So go ahead and check that out.
Go ahead, Dwayne. I don't know if Dwayne wanted to say something. He's down there at the bottom. Dwayne, whenever you want to jump in, please go ahead and jump in. But Jason, there was a couple of questions. I see somebody was saying Jason is great somewhere. But if you guys want to go ahead and jump in, we can keep going.
Oh, yeah. So Dwayne Akins, Executive Director, Co-founder, We Lead Ours, also working on my EDD in Curriculum Development, Leadership Instruction. And you guys were touching on a lot of good points. I actually just got in from running our tennis program, and I'm one of them executive directors. I created my job, my dream job for myself. So I put the MBA proposal together when I was working on that degree, and I'm different from a lot of other EDs because you have to be committed to the work. And so what you guys are actually saying, it's really interesting because being 11 years old in the nonprofit business in Oakland, some of the major grant people are just now starting to be like, oh, we're going to invest in WeLo. We're going to support We Lead Ours. And so when you're committed to this work, and especially when you're working in education programs as well as community, you can't just mentor on Monday and not show up on Tuesday. We have a lot of organizations here in the Bay Area that touch the surface of the work, but they don't commit to the work. And so we need you past the photo op. We need you to actually sit on different tables and be a part of different conversations. And it starts on a local level. Over here in Oakland, I've served on the Parks Commission. I just retired off that board. Now I just got appointed to the Sugar Tax Advisory Commission. I'm on BART, Environmental Justice, Title VI Committee, as well as retire from Keep Oakland Beautiful. So making sure that you sit in different lanes that are familiar with the territory that you want to work in. And I always want to work in parks, in the community, and with youth. And so anything that I do on this platform, it's always connected. Therefore, I won't get too deterred from my own personal mission statement, which is mentoring as a way of life. And I think we all have to define those things. And the sister was talking about holding the schools accountable. Understanding education law is very important. My dissertation study is actually going to be on reimagining the Black male education experience, and it's going to be looking at a case study for educating at elementary, because I believe what happens is we have kids that go to school that don't really have some of the supports at home or get those positive reinforcements at home from some, and like I had a grandmother, even though my mom was on drugs and my dad was in and out of jail, I had a grandmother that was consistent. Even though my mom was on drugs, she was still consistent at building me up. So she would say, you're going to be a doctor one day, right? Many of my friends, they didn't have that same thing at home. So I was getting in trouble at school, but I was told that I was a great kid at home. And so you have to make sure that you do tell your kids that this is our house standard. This is our swag. This is what we rocking with. So when you go out of here, you represent me in this space, and we have goals for you. And you're right. Everybody is not into education, are going to go off to college. But in elementary, I knew for a fact after watching School Days and after seeing the Revenge of the Nerds that I was going to college. I was like, I cannot wait to get to college, right? And I knew that I was going to go through an evolution of school because I like to learn, and that's cool. Some people like to play sports. Some people like to do music. Some people like to read books. Whatever you like to do, use that as your super skill, your super talent to propel you forward. I also recognize early on that, hey, Dwayne, you don't like working for other people, so you're gonna have to do your own thing. You're gonna have to create your own job. You're gonna have to make things happen for yourself. And this year, during the pandemic, we started Legit Money Club. So we meet virtually every Wednesday from 1 to 2 on Zoom. And we're teaching kids about using their superpower to create money for themselves. Because I believe through development, your side hustle shouldn't be selling drugs. It shouldn't be going out there robbing people. It shouldn't be going over there pushing over the Asian elderly people and doing those type of things. That should not be your side hustle. Your side hustle should be your super talent. If you can draw, somebody will pay for that skill. If you can do hair, somebody will pay you to do hair, right? So using all of those different gifts and talents that Black folks are always complimented for, right? Use it not as doing a favor for somebody, but do it because you're passionate about it and that you can bring hope to your own personal dreams. And be very optimistic and be able to walk in a room and be able to talk, be able to communicate with all different types of people. And you put all those things in your toolkit. I call it a toolkit. And so anything that I give kids, I'm giving you something for your toolkit. One day you're going to need to use one of those things in your toolkit. And you're going to remember when you're at that wine mixer, you can have that conversation. You can go in there and you can understand exactly what you're supposed to do in this room. Our mentoring program, mentoring on the fly, that's different style of mentoring. For young men, it's 10 through life. Young ladies, it's 8 through life. We started this program specifically because, like you said, kids need to be doing something engaging on Saturdays, right? And so I just took a group of my young men to Cal Berkeley to a baseball game. And we was walking, and I was like, this kind of like mentoring on the fly. Okay, that's this program, mentoring on the fly. And it's designed to help anybody that want to mentor in some capacity participate. So what that looks like, you might can only participate because of work once a year. That's cool. We'll utilize you when you're there. You might not even want to mentor kids. You might just want us to come shadow you in your workplace and you bring some of your colleagues. That's career exploration right there. That's putting these kids in front of individuals that look like them in different spaces. But it's all about, I heard the brothers Tony talking about the political spectrum. Getting these kids to know how to have a conversation with the elected officials and the leaders is so critical. Everybody's people. Anybody that works for a city, for a state, you're a person, and people have feelings. And everybody in those leadership roles are not going to make a 100%. Nobody's going to be perfect as a politician. It's impossible, right? However, you can have a normal conversation without cussing somebody out and acting crazy. You're cussing out a person. They're not going to want to help you. So now you're going to have to figure out how to beat them at the ballot box if you really want them out of that seat. And that means that if you don't really like them that much, you need to get out there and door knock for somebody, and you need to fundraise, and you need to help, and you can bring forth all of that energy into this education space. But definitely academia, it definitely have to be reimagined, because our kids, especially in elementary, once they get that turn off and they're not inspired to learn anymore, when they get to middle school, they go to school, but they go barely be there. High school, oh, I can cut school now. I'm never coming to the classroom. All because somebody crushed their dreams in elementary. Sorry to talk for too long. But
no, that's very powerful. I'm glad you jumped in and said that, Dwayne, but I'm going to go back to my same question that I posed everybody earlier. We all working in this nonprofit world. Are we doing something to impact the community? These poverty pimps, am I the only one seeing this? Dwayne, you doing the work. You see these people that come into our community, they come up with programs, they pimp our kids in our system, and they get the funding and they run, or they don't do everything that's needed. And then also what you said was very powerful. I think that is what, since we're talking about prison reform and people have records and things that hold them from achieving financially, entrepreneurship is a big thing that we need to bring to our community. And like you said, campaigning. Our community problem is we only want to show up when the president election. We need to get on the local level and deal with the local stuff that's going to affect us day to day. And then we got these young people that's all in the streets, right? Rico talk about this all the time. How do we get these kids to get involved with something else when they see their friends on Instagram with 5-10 bands in their hand, and we're asking them to go to work for $13 an hour?
I think you hit the nail on the coffin, right? I got this crazy theory, and people might hate that I have this theory, but my theory, a part of reimagining education and police reform, individuals who go to prison, I believe if you didn't molest anybody, rape somebody, or do something like a Michael Myers type of crime, that you deserve to be able to be reintegrated in society. Who better to deal with a knucklehead, right? And I've seen some of these brothers and sisters that come out the prison reform, and I got a ton of education, but they sharp and they are stewards of knowledge, and that's a wealth of talent that can actually go and support these kids in the classroom. You may have an awesome instructor from Iowa that moved to the Bay Area that can teach and can interact, but the highly probability of that happening is not too high. They go get burned out here because this is foreign to them. And this is not just a dig at Caucasian instructors. This is also a dig at brothers and sisters who from the Midwest that don't understand these kids in the Bay Area because it's foreign to them. They don't get this. So you need to provide kids with instructional aids, and in this day and age, I'm gonna say proctors, because teachers have to work. Teachers You are really a performer. Whenever you in front of a classroom, you are a performer. And whatever you going on in your personal life, you may have not paid your rent. Your car note be late. You cannot bring that into the classroom, and you can't take it personal. I got this thing whenever I'm dealing with a group. It's cool. You having the moment. I'm not kicking you out of this class because I'm going to challenge you to learn, right? You may call me a name. Oh, that's cool. Let's pick up the phone and we go tell your mama or your daddy that you're using this language. Oh, they look at me like I'm crazy. But then that respect thing, they're like, okay, Mr. Aiken's not going to tolerate that. I don't have a teaching credential. I got a degree in psychology, minor in special ed, master's in business administration, and about to be a doctor of leadership development, curriculum instruction. But I think that kids are just, they're waiting to learn. I don't care how hyper they are or what. That kid might need to stand up and they might need to tap. That may be how they memorize numbers or something like that. That's cool. So if the tapping is a little loud, you say, hey, Dwayne, how about you can still tap, but let's figure out a way so it's silent. And then when the kid really disrespect you one day, don't take it personal. Just meet that kid at the door the next morning and have a proper check-in, and don't embarrass the kid in front of the class. Pick and choose your discipline situations. Which ones are instant correctable? Which ones do I may need to speak with this kid in person? Treat them like a young adult, because that is a person. They have feelings, they have emotions. We not inside the head, but we just got to always imagine the kid in us and the id that lives inside of all us. And how would you would act when you were in the 4th, 3rd grade? Would you respond the same way? And 9 out of 10 times it's often yes. And when educators understand that, and educators understand that you don't know everything, and it's all right to pick up a dictionary in the middle of the class and say, I don't know how to spell that word neither. Let's figure it out together. You are not incompetent. You actually being resourceful. So educators need to understand how to be educators, and you're actually performing. That's a job. 8 hours standing up in front of kids. You got to have a playwright that is amazing. And that's why the kids like to go to the classes where it's a little loud and it's a little chaotic, but it's still respect. And so it's a happy medium. We can be a little loud in here, but we go still learn something. And I believe you throw poetry and poems and games in the middle of the classroom, and you let the thing just happen. And that's why I couldn't be an educator, because I could not. Well, I am an educator, but I couldn't be a teacher, because I'm like, they got them reading this curriculum guideline. They taking away the creative energy that educator might have got into education for. They might have wanted to cook brownies and stuff with the kids and teach math and science through cooking. Now they can't even do that because of so many regulations in the schools and stuff like that. But I'm 100% in agreement with private schools for our kids, so that they can get the foundation they need. So when they do walk in front, because they go have professors that don't like them, that don't get them, that think they're odd, think they're different, but they need to be able to throw down in a different way. And that's on the university setting. Long as I can write and protect myself and make sure that APA paper is strong, and you can't say I plagiarized anything, then you can't fail me because you disagree with my opinion. And our kids get failed a lot of times in school because they debunk what the teacher has said, and the teacher can't. You can't fail a kid for disagreeing with you. Your job is to inspire the kid to consider thinking your way. That's your job. And if they don't, then that's fine. That they do their work and stuff like that. So we got to really teach our kids how to be students. Because I went to school in the Oakland Unified School District, made the front page of the newspaper. I got to Xavier University of Louisiana, and those kids that, being from California, we thought, oh, the South is slow. Those kids from New Orleans and Houston, Texas, they was swimming laps around us. I never heard of organic chemistry and stuff like that. They was doing this stuff already in their high schools. And these was kids from Black middle class environments in those places. And some were Blacks from the hood. and stuff that grew up in the projects in New Orleans. And when I seen those things, I called my grandmother and said, thank you. And I just think a mind is a terrible thing to waste. And we got to challenge kids and accountability. You said accountability. That's 100% important. And with reimagining police, we got to be ready to be the foot soldiers to roll up on that block 100 deep, be like, y'all can't get us all. And this is no longer accepted in our hood. And you're going to move out. Or either you're going to put on a suit or a nice dress and you're going to go to work. You're going to go to work with us. You're going to join this army and we're going to get you employed and we're going to make sure that these things happen. But the killing must stop. The drugs must stop. The human trafficking must stop inside our communities. And until we fix that as a group of collective minds of Black people, it's going to be really hard for us to say, shut down the police force, or however we want to reimagine it, if we don't check our neighborhoods first.
Man, powerful statement. Jason and Tony, you wanted to jump in there? I see you guys waiting.
Yeah, right quick in respect to that prison reform stuff. I mean, a lot of it was said about the right voices being at the table, especially, I mean, you were talking about the skills that many of us have and carry, especially young folks, and capitalize on them. They call those incubators, where you develop those ideas and turn them into a profit means to make a living off of. And we need to develop those. That's some of that innovative thinking process. And then in respect to the voices at the table, oftentimes when you talk about young folks' issues, it's always an adult speaking for the young folks. We need to fix that. But in respect to this prison reform stuff, some of that stuff seems like a no-brainer off the top. We need to hurry up and remove. I mean, this is a systematic thing, but we need to hurry up and remove that profit margin. There's no way that we can continue to ask to change or rearrange something, and it's a whole bunch of folks making a whole bunch of money off of it. That should not happen. That's not what that system was designed for, and it shouldn't happen. So that's one of the quick fixes. And then in respect to some of these prison profiteers also working both sides of the spectrum, we need to eliminate that. In what world does a person get to, like, I mean, that would be the equivalent of Venus Williams playing herself in tennis. We already know who's going to win. That's just not how it happened. It's not, talk about the even playing field. We need the best people to have work in re-entry or the reintegration process are successful formerly incarcerated folks. I think we need to take that over because we're invested in it differently. For us, it's more about passion and the true desire to help people succeed beyond prison, not profits, not any of that stuff, not looking good on some news snippet. It's about helping people get to better places in real time. So I think that those are two quick fixes: eliminate the profit margin and having formerly incarcerated folks run reentry and reintegration as far as prison reform goes. That's just my 2 cents.
Now, when you say that, you're impacting people. You're impacting people when you say that. And I think that's why it's so hard to change. I mean, even some of the information that came out about our vice president and the investment that her husband has in private prisons, it's hard to change that when there's so much profitability and money, right? Because all these corporations is making money. So that's where the legislative part has to come in there. If we don't get it legislatively, the greed of making money off people is going to keep happening. You know what I mean? And that's just where it is. So and that goes back to this capitalist society, this classism, because as we impact people economically and educationally, we know where they're going. So I'm going to put my bets, like anybody that gamble, anybody do something, you'll put your bet where you know it's safe. There's a highly chance of it's happening. And that's where we got to change it at on that level.
Shit, John, you said call them out. We got to call them out then. Shit, I mean, that's just what it is. Don't tell us you want to fix this and be a part of the problem. That's not right. It's counterproductive.
Definitely. Tony, you want to jump in there? Then I'm
gonna be real short. I'm real short with mine. So I want to thank Dwayne first for all the things he's doing with the youth in the community. We're gonna definitely connect. Jason, what you just said is going to segue into my story. I have a story, 30 seconds or less. I presented a proposal to DJS out in Prince George's County. My program was based on being proactive and preventive, meaning we wanted to stop juveniles from having any contact with the criminal justice system. I sat down with all the people, the state's attorneys, the case managers, and they was like, oh yeah, that's a good sign. They never got back with me. I'm down the courthouse a lot because I work on criminal cases. I run into one of the individuals. I told that person I would never say their name or anything. That person sat down to me and said, Tony, I love what you want to do with these kids. He said, yeah, I get paid because I'm part of DJS. He said, but you're about to step on a lot of toes because they look for that money from the federal government every year to pay those individuals for juveniles to get in trouble so they can do what? So they can oversee them. And so that's my story, is that our system, what Jason just said, is built on the money. Jason said something else after that was let formerly incarcerated individuals lead the charge. And why that is very important and why that's very true, because those who have experienced it will have more passion and understanding as to the needs of those who are coming from a form of incarceration. So I'm done with that.
Before Eula speak, I just want to, because I want you to touch on what we talked about, the people who are in prison coming back to the community, some of the challenges that community needs to understand when dealing with these people. I want to get there. But Tony, I want to say this to you, because this is both sides of the conversation. Here in San Francisco and California, they are closing down the YA, all of the youth authorities, the young people prison. In San Francisco, they closing down the San Francisco Youth Guidance Center, the youth jail. I'm all for it. I don't want people being locked up. I never wanted that. But here's the thing. We have some young people out in our community that are doing some heinous crimes, doing some things. How do we get them? Because I understand. I've done 20 plus years working in juvenile hall. That's what I do. Me and Ayula, this is what we do. But I also understand some of these young men and young women in the community, they need a timeout. They got to get away from their community. They got to get away from their friends. Sometimes they got to get away from their own family. And some of the proposals that they're proposing in closing this juvenile hall center is not sufficient for the young people that we're working with. And that's all I want to throw out there. I'm not for locking my people up. But again, we got young people in our community dealing with mental health, drugs, family issues. They are killing, robbing, doing different things. When do we get them in a place where they can get that time out and properly disengage themselves from the community? And I'm not saying it has to be locked up, but we have to create something to get them out of the community. Because I know once these kids is locked up and they ain't getting no drugs in their system, you're dealing with a different individual. Okay, when they're on the streets and they out there with their partners, you're dealing with a different individual. So how do we get them into those spaces that can be productive? And maybe this private school and this educational thing that we're talking about, we can set something up for them, but we got to get them sometimes away from the family and the community so that they actually can be productive citizens.
All right, real quick before Miss Ayola comes on. That was the creation for Fresh. Fresh already had the curriculums and the programs already set up for the youth who we were trying to prevent from going into the juvenile system or even the adult system. So we already have that in place. I actually talked to a council member last night who asked me to present him tomorrow morning with our proposal. And I said, he heard about me. He said, man, I heard you down out here in the county doing some things. He said, man, can you present a proposal to me about these kids? I said, I got you tomorrow morning. And that's it.
And that's powerful. Because I'm going to tell you what's not going to happen because we got less than a year, they closing down this San Francisco Juvenile Hall. What I don't want to, what I see could possibly happen is, because we're being so relaxed on crime, we're going to have a high suicide rate in prison. Okay, because this is what's going to happen. See, out here they proposing not locking up no young people from the ages of 12 to 18. We don't want to put them in no type of, encaged environment or controlled environment for 23 hours a day or whatever, right? But they let these kids do all these crimes and they let them get away until they turn 18. And then you send them to prison with grown men who career criminals. And they never locked down. They never did 23 hours a day. And they go commit suicide because they never lived that lifestyle. I'm just being real. Because see, one thing about the juveniles right now is these kids get a kind of understanding of what it's like to be locked up. But now you'll take these young 18-year-old kids who've been doing all these crimes and they've been getting away and they just been letting them go until they turn 18. And then they got to program up and they ain't going to make it. We're going to have a high suicide rate in prisons. I guarantee you, I'm predicting it, but I'm telling you that's what's going to happen because these young people are, when they, the way they're trying to do it out here in California, they're going to let these young people keep getting out of jail, keep getting away, doing heinous crimes, very, very violent crimes in our community, and they're going to set them up when they turn 18. And I guarantee you, the suicide rate for some of these young people are going to be very high. We got to watch those numbers. But go ahead, Miss Ayula. You know what I want you to talk about, but go ahead.
One of the things I want to say is to add on to what Jason was saying about people who have been formerly incarcerated, working on the importance in them being at the table, if not running reentry. But I also want to say that this my 41st year working in the punishment system, I have a different perspective than someone who's been incarcerated, because I see when I'm working in jails and when I'm working in prisons, I'm spending time with men and women in a way that other people don't. And there's some things there's some needs that aren't being met. And I'm talking about on the inside. So we talk a lot about reentry, jobs, housing, things like that. But the transition from prison home has been challenging for a lot of the men and women that I'm working with. There's not enough. We're not abolishing prisons tomorrow or next week or next year. And so what can we do to provide information and services, if you will, for those who are incarcerated and on their way home? I do healing work. I mean, I do a lot of things, but healing work is what my call is. There is so much trauma. There's the trauma before prison, there's the trauma in prison, and there's the trauma of prison. And that has to be addressed, and healing has to happen, because what I've seen is people come home and they have job opportunities and they may even have housing, but they're not healed. And so they are not productive. They're drowning in a lot of ways. They can't keep a job. They can get jobs, but they can't keep a job. So we have to talk about the transition prior to them even coming home. A project that I'm currently proposing for a program that I'm just completing at Columbia University is to be able to work with families on both sides of the walls in preparation for somebody coming home, dealing with the mental and emotional impact of incarceration on the family as well as the person who has been incarcerated. I'm working with a young man who has been home 2.5 years, and he shared with me recently that about 6 months he finally learned how to wash clothes. Now, there's so many aspects of transition that we just don't think about. Working with people coming home and getting jobs and their employer pressuring them to get direct deposit and them saying no, and finally calling one of my colleagues and saying, I don't even know what direct deposit is. So there's a lot more work that has to be done with reentry as it relates to healing from incarceration and trauma, as well as job readiness, not just filling out an application and knowing how to interview. So those are some of the things that I've seen when we're talking about, and I don't use a lot of the verbiage that everybody uses. So prison reform, I'm probably not going to use that. But as we're talking about people transitioning from incarceration, there's a myriad of areas that need to be addressed outside of just the traditional reentry. And that's some of the work that I'm doing, but I'm one person. I don't have an organization. I'm over nonprofit, so I'm not going to be starting a nonprofit, but there's also not a value placed on the work that I'm doing. I do the work in, like Danielle read in my bio, before the pandemic, I was at San Quentin every week, Friday, Saturday, and oftentimes on Sunday, facilitating groups where we're talking about the healing. We're talking about preparing you to go home. And how are you going to cope with, you've done 25 years and you come home and you're 50 and you have a supervisor who's 23 and talking to you in a way that would got them socked up on the yard. And so these are all the things that we have to address and we have to talk about, and we have to formulate plans and solutions. And, you know, John Henry was talking about the elders stepping back. Listen, I want to pass the torch. I want to train up, teach up other people to do the important work that we're not talking about a lot. I often don't hear people talking about it at all, but the healing work of incarceration and the readiness to transition both within their families as well as on job sites.
Wow, that's very powerful, Ayula. It is a lot of transition work that needs to happen, especially when people do 5-10 years, you know, coming back into the community, technology, different things changes. We definitely got to look at that as well. But we're getting close here. We got about 20 minutes left. The way I want to kind of end this thing off is at the end, I definitely want to give everybody an opportunity to give some closing words and some encouragement or some things to the community. But this last 20 minutes, you know, for all you on here, Tony, Jason, Ayula, if a person never knew anything about prison reform and you had to explain to them in your ideal mind, if you had the power to impact the community, and this is for some of our elected officials who may be watching right now, some people who may be doing the work, maybe trying to write up a bill or trying to do something, to hear from you guys right now, all of you on this panel, in your eyes, if you had the power to make the change, what does prison reform look like to you? If you had the throne to do everything, what does it look like? I want you guys to articulate that in a way, because if we have some allies or if we have some lawmakers or some people who are watching and they're looking for ideals, how to impact this system through prison reform in their city, in their state, in their county, whatever it is, I just want to hear from you guys. What do you think this prison reform needs to look like, or what would you like to see it to be? And anybody can start. You can start, Jason.
I think I pretty much said it. I mean, if I had the magic, what they call the magic wand, the hypothetical magic wand, I would eliminate any of those folks on the profiteering side, as well as the punitive lockdown folks in charge of reintegration. I think those who need to run and take over reintegration are formerly incarcerated folks. I think you'll have a different system, hands down.
Okay, cool. I like that perspective. Very simple, straight to the point. And while we thinking about this, Tony, before you speak, you know, this in America has this notion of giving people a second chance, and this cancel culture that we have. Has this affected the way we see this change? Because it's almost like in America, we say we give people a second chance, but when people come home from prison, there's no second chance. Or even in the community, right? We're not even gonna stay on a prison level. In the community, people can't get a second chance. How do we fix that part of it? Because I think people say, you know, you go and did your time, you come back to the community, but I still think that there's really not a healing process that really happens to really welcome people back when they come home from prison. Maybe their family welcome them and support them, but a community as a whole, when people come home, I just don't see that support, or I still hear the negative connotations like, oh, you know, he went to prison. How do we fix that and change that and think about that as well? But I want to give it to you, Tony. If you had the magic wand, as Jason said, what was this prison reform look like to you? And what do you think about this second chance ideal notion in America?
Well, I always say you be the change that you want to see. We have a gentleman who was a juvenile when he was incarcerated 31 years ago. And let me make sure I get it right, because he always say 31 years, 5 months, and 15 days. When he came home, the Fresh program took him in, and we basically walked with him every step. He got frustrated because he didn't know how to use the phone. And so that's one of the things that needs to be addressed about the phones. He needed to get his Social Security card. He needed to get on they give you this card for your food stamp. So he needed to get the SNAP done, the EBD. So we was trying to do all these things. We got everything done, but we had to walk him through every step. Now he has a job. He has his driver license. He has a car. He only been home 4 months. And the thing that he said about the second chance was when he speaks, he said, biblically, if you believe in that, when Saul was a murderer, God forgave Saul and gave him a second chance. He said, so why are people in the system can't be given a second chance if God gave a murderer a second chance? And so with the reform, everything starts with the judges, the prosecutors, and the lawyers. So for anybody that sees my business, it's called The Great Injustice. I have been around lawyers, judges, and prosecutors. I believe that's where the reform starts, because a lot of times they throw away the key. I have been in a courtroom where a judge sentenced a young man, 14, 15 years old, to 3 life sentences, plus 20 years, and then gave him all consecutive. He's only 14 years old. You are a judge who has been put in a position to oversee this, but now you want to throw this young man's life away because of the decision he made. And it goes back to you, John, what you said about what we're going to do now when California start closing all those juvenile places up. What are we going to have for those young people to do in order so they don't commit crimes and don't have a place to go? And so what the reform is, we, all of us on this panel now, Eula, 41 years, I'm going to clap my hands off to you because you still look good. You're supposed to be gray on now. I got to give her that. And so I'm going to give you that. Just do this, us. We keep doing what we're doing. Jason, Dwayne, John, Daniel, let's keep doing what we're doing. And I'm going to say why that's important and I'm going to let it go. When I started the Fresh program, I was doing it by myself. Individuals who saw me in the community who had a interest in what I was doing became volunteers and said, hey, Tony, man, you really care about these kids. Hey, Tony, you really care about the return of citizens. And they started coming aboard and helping me make the change that we wanted to see. So that's all I ask is us just keep making a change. And those who have our same similar goals, our same similar missions, Jason said it, most importantly, our passion, then we can make this change and make it happen.
Man, powerful stuff right there, brother. I'm glad you said that. Very, very powerful. And yes, Ayula, thank you for the work. We can never pat you on the back enough because I know the long nights and Tyrone drive to do the work you do. I've been on a lot of these. We've been in a lot of meetings together, so I know the work. But I want to let you go ahead and give your spiel if you had the magic wand. And then my brother Charles Ryan, he's a brother that been through the prison system. I want to hear from him about what he thinks we need to do to change. But first, we'll go ahead and let you do your thing, Ayula.
Hey, shout out to my brother Charles. I see you popped on. So I would piggyback on what Jason is saying, that there has to be some the profit margin in everything related to incarceration has to change. And I find it interesting that you can't just there's limits on everything else, it seems to me, except for what it costs people who are incarcerated to buy commissary, to use the phone, to use use JPay. I was talking to a brother the other day, and he was saying that he could spend $300 a month on commissary. And then I'm no mathematician, but I'm thinking $300 a month, and he's in a dorm with 100 other people. That's like 300. Let's say everybody spent $300 a month. That's $300,000 for that one dorm in that one prison. So the profit in incarceration, it has to be legislated. So that's one of the things that I want to see change. These long ass sentences, ridiculous. There should be no death penalty. There should be no LWOP, which is the other death penalty. Nobody should be sentenced to the sentence that Tony mentioned, so forth and so on. It's ridiculous. And also the healing part. You know, people in the work that I've done in the prisons in California, what I have found to be true is that when people understand their own pathology, when people are able to heal from their trauma, they are able to have empathy for the harm that they've caused other people. They are more accountable, and they come home and they give back. If at the very least they don't reoffend. And so healing has to be talked about. Healing has to be part of the change and transformation of the punishment system.
Wow, thank you, Ayula. That was very powerful. Dwayne, you want to go ahead and say something, Dwayne, before Charles jump in there?
Yeah, I think just when you think about reimagining the prison system, I really like the college idea concept. I really think it's just a matter of getting folks into a place to where they can actually be healthy community members, basically, and really figuring out what got them to that place of committing whatever offense it was, and try to work on really correcting the behavior so that they can not commit it again. Now, if they continue to do the same thing, that's when we need to rely on more therapeutic stuff. Like, you may need some therapy, you may need something else, but putting somebody in a cage and just having them melt away in jail, that's such a disservice to humans, and just really us, like, because we're ounces of potential. And when people don't know how to work for them, they're just melting away. And so I don't want to see any more of our brothers and sisters melting away in prison. And we definitely need to be the communicators behind the legislation, because it really has done a disservice to the African American community for sure. And we definitely need to engage in policy, the talks.
Yeah, that's powerful. I see my brother Charles Bryan. I know you on the road, moving mobily. Can you talk for a second, my brother? Or what's going on? Go ahead and let me see what you got, brother.
So I just gonna turn off the camera first, man, so I won't be staring at it. I'm on the road to go grab something to eat for me and the wife right quick. But two things that I heard Ayula say as far as the money. Um, it's cold when we as human beings make a mistake, go to prison, have to work in order to get a few privileges that might make you somewhat comfortable up in there, but you're working jobs that should pay us somewhere between $15 and $25 an hour, and we're working for pennies. And at the end of the month, when you get that paycheck, it's saying something like $13, $14. And then you happen to call a family member, as Ayula is saying, to try to spend some money so you can have some food. It's just like we make a mistake, and then we be in a situation where our families are having to pay for the mistake that we made. And that part bothers me big time. It's so many different things about the prison system that I can't stand, John. I spent 16 years up in there. So you say 16 years, 8 months is a long time. And to have to go through that process to be where I'm at today, I'm extremely blessed and grateful. But I try my best I have two groups that I do on Tuesdays and Thursdays for pretrial diversion called Thinking for a Change. And the beauty of it all is that our CEO and my supervisor let me run the group the way I want to. So I'm not using curriculum. I'm talking to them where they are and fully making sure that they understand anything that they do in today's society that's illegal. They're going to jail for it. There's too many cameras everywhere. So understand, if you're doing anything that's going to hurt or harm somebody, you're going to jail. And our mayor, everybody is ready to convict real fast if you do anything in the city right now, because it's a tourist city. That's where they're making their money from. So with all the individuals that I work with, they all coming through San Francisco County jail system, and pretrial diversion links them in with me. I pretty much pick my groups. I'm working with the 18 to 35 year olds and maybe some 45 to 50 year olds, somewhere around there. But all of them are crazy about participating in the group because they don't hear the information the way I give it to them. Like when I worked inside the jails, most of the stuff has to be, you can't say it like you really need to say it, right? You might get banned from even doing anything inside the jail. But out here, I'm happy that my CEO allows me to run the group in a way that I feel that will help those individuals that's going through it and help them not reoffend so they won't be a victim of the system. Because if they keep on doing what they're doing, and most of it is learned behavior, they keep on doing it, they letting the system win all day long, and none of us want to lose at anything. So why give them an opportunity by doing the silly things that a lot of, I would say, is silly? Because if you out there committing crime to try to make $1, you go end up charging your family 100 times more than that when you get incarcerated because they're not really getting anything. Um, it, I don't know, John. I mean, Ayula is up in there all the time. Most of the
Hey,
stuff that she said is definitely true. I get it.
hey,
Oh,
right quick though, Charles.
Charles
Go
Jackson.
ahead.
Can I say, because somebody had just mentioned sometime we got to walk the walk, aside from just talking a good one, and it's good to see Brother Charles, because right now this is interesting, because as youngsters they sent us into the killing field. I don't know if you remember me, Charles. We was in Calipatria together when we were in the early 90s, and to see us now thriving is what this discussion is actually all about. So I appreciate you, man. It's good to see you on this side and doing your thing, and we got to
That's
keep
my
pushing,
boy
man.
Jason.
That's
What's
right.
up, Jason?
How you
What's
doing,
up,
man?
Jason? Man, Jason, through all the stuff that we've been through, man, it
I
makes it
know.
easier for me to provide the information to them. And it comes with credibility. I mean, unfortunately, I had to sit in that county jail for 6 years for something I didn't do, and they was trying to prosecute me because I wouldn't tell on somebody. I grew up in the neighborhood. We don't do no telling in the neighborhood.
Yeah.
So even though I wasn't participating in the streets, I allowed a situation to come within my space. And when I did, it put me in it.
Yeah.
You know what I'm
I
saying?
remember.
And
I mean, I wouldn't go get into it that deep,
yeah,
but I remember, bro, and I'm just glad to see you out there
it,
doing your thing, and we having this talk about some positivity and helping some other folk. But it's good
most
to see you,
definitely,
man. I
man.
appreciate you.
For sure.
Yeah,
John,
yeah, Charles is a beautiful soul, man, and dedicated brother, man. And Charles, I respect and support all the stuff you do, man. And thank you for just chiming in. I know you got a lot going on in you, but you was able to come in because I think it's people like you that really impact the youth and impact the community because you understand both sides of what goes on
both
both sides.
sides, man.
And
Both sides.
it's very powerful, man. So thank you again for tuning in. Hopefully next week you could jump back on with us next week for part 2 because I know you got some positive stuff and some things that ideals that's working. But with that being said, we're getting close here on time. We got a few minutes left. We got to wrap this thing up. One of the things that I heard Ayula kind of speak to it is this prison reform because I know there's a big thing to kind of lessen the sentencing. What I really want to see is these minimum max sentences change. This automatic, you commit a crime, you got 3-5 years probation, like Karen Fletcher said last week. In some states, people are getting lifetime parole and probation. We got to change that because that helps keep the incarceration rates up. And that's another thing that's for money to keep probation officer hired and things of that nature. But we gotta really look at it. And I think the other thing, as we start doing the reform and things are happening in different states and counties, it's going to look different. But we have to also remember that we got to deal with this mental health issue in our community. The Black and brown community has been impacted heavily when it comes to mental health and substance abuse. And we have to make it mandatory when we start lessening these sentences and we start reimagining and doing different things that we incorporate that these people get the mental health treatment because in our communities, we have to make mental health we got to make it cool. We got to make the young people feel like they can go talk to a therapist. And it starts with people in the community that's been locked up, coming back, our entertainers, the rappers, the basketball players, everybody. We have to do our part, men and women of the community, to really tap into this mental health and start seeking help and making it cool. We got to start making songs and we got to start making commercials and we got to start having our people that are influencers talk about mental health and talk about the things that they're doing for us, their work in therapy, because I think that's very, very important. That's part of to get these lesser sentence. We got to attach things to things as we change it too. Just like we talk about the whole thing with reparations. You know, my biggest thing is, hey, I'm all for everybody getting reparations, but we got to give people financial literacy before they receive these handouts of cash and different things. We have to impact the community intentionally to make sure that they get the information, they learn about financial literacy before we just hand things over. And I think that goes with all reform. We have to attach something to get people involved, because if we don't, we're going to get right back into the same system of things, or how things been going, because we all know if they give us reparations, they're going to take something away, and it might be, you know, EBT, or they might take away Section 8, whatever it is. They're going to give something to take something, and I just want to make sure that our people are intentionally getting the right information so that when these changes happen, or these reparations, or this reform, whatever it is, that we are prepared to come back in the community and be successful for sustainability. Nothing is good if we get it now and there's no sustainability. So just want to say I appreciate all you guys coming on, giving you time, especially to the brother Tony, way out in the East Coast, couple of hours ahead of us. Commitment. See, this is what dedication and commitment look like. Thank you, Jason, for the work you're doing. Dwayne in Oakland, local brothers. But man, the brother came on from the East Coast talking about the things that he's doing, impacting everybody. I just think that's powerful stuff that's happening. We got to unite. We got to continue to work together to make our community in a way that is sustainable and is beneficial for everybody. So with that being said, I'm gonna give everybody
something. I'm sorry.
Okay, so let me just do this real quick, Danielle. We're going to give everybody an opportunity to give some closing words, because I want to close out with you guys blessing the community with some whatever it is you want to say. It doesn't even matter whether it's tied to this prison reform. I just think it's very powerful to have people leave off with something so people could think about as they end the day. So Danielle, go ahead, say what you need to say, then give off your ending words. We'll move over to Jason, then Tony, Dwayne, Charles, and then we're going to end this segment for the day.
Yes, thank you. And thank you everyone for coming on to the show and talking about your experience and getting back there and helping. Some people leave the prison system and just don't come back or don't do anything. So thank you for keeping your word and your promise. I do want to say some of the things that I would like to see are a lot of these men, a lot of our sisters and brothers are locked up for crimes that they never committed in the first place. There's no DNA evidence in anything. I'd like to see those people released. I think I saw a social media handle where there was a young brother there was a video of a man who went in at like 15. He came out in his 80s, and it was a crime he never committed. It was just over racism. So I'd like to see that in, and education and rehabilitation. Stanley Tukey Williams, the founder of the Crip gangs, wrote they ended up killing him. He was on death row, and I was totally against that. But anyway, he wrote children's books while he was in there. So he wrote children's books, and I read those books to my kids. Some of them that were thinking about joining gangs, I read those books to them. So that was just absolutely great. So yes, getting our brothers educated that are in there, and then definitely therapy and rehabilitation for the people that are coming out back into the environment. Because a lot of them will come back into that toxic jungle-like environment where there's a lot of crime and people shoot each other. And it's hard. It's hard to come out with the refined mind and receive all these treatments and services and being put back into the environment. So definitely that right there. So also, and the last thing is our president right now, Joe Biden, he said when he was getting it, that before he got into office, he said he was going to get rid of private prisons. Okay. And he was going to try to get rid of the death penalty and all this. I really haven't heard or seen a president in my lifetime that did any of that. So we as Black people, as people of color, especially as African Americans, we have a tendency to vote 80% Democrat, and we put these people in office and we don't hold them accountable. Like, I'm ready to march, seriously. You know, we're the ones that got him in there. So I'm ready for a march to the Capitol, and I'm ready to call him out. And I'm ready to stand with some people that's going to call them out and say, our people are being the most impacted, our African Americans, and you got to do something about this because you promised us this. So yes, let's leave our politicians accountable. And with that said, I'm done.
All right, thank you. Brother Jason, you want to go ahead and give some final words, some thoughts, or some positivity to the community?
Just right quick, I know some of this stuff, we talked about a lot of different things. It can be insurmountable or seem insurmountable a lot of times, but it's basically two levels of responsibility. We got some systematic things that we need to work to change. And if any opportunity presents itself, step in there and do it. Sometimes it's policy. But then that other piece that you talk about is individual work that we all can never give up on. And that's that that healing, that internal healing, that wound that if we don't work on, will just fester and continue to cause problems for us in our lives. So hopefully everyone is realizing that, and we continue to work on both of those things.
Go ahead, Brother Tony.
All right, so I just leave you with our mission statement. Together, we all can create a better society and safer communities. And whenever I have a meeting with anybody, I always say, let's make it happen.
All right. All power to the people. My brother Dwayne, my Oaktown brother, you know I got to reach out to you. Go on and give the people some love and some information, man. I think your mic is muted, D.
This has been really powerful to hear from so many different perspectives of just to have this conversation. And I agree, we definitely got to make sure we hold politicians accountable. One thing that we're doing here, a group of my peers from this side of the bridge, what we're working on is actually developing accountability education super PAC that's really rooted at working on Black people issues, basically, because everybody benefited from the civil rights movement and any other movement, and it's always African Americans at the forefront, and we get the leftovers at the table. So now it's time to make sure that after we get through this Great Depression that we're in right now, and this new era of civil rights, that we make sure that we hold folks accountable. So many of our powerful politicians, even the ones that look like us, a lot of times the ones that look like us, they got their check and they comfortable with continuing to get that check, and they don't want to share that power or those resources. So we want to make sure that we do things a little bit differently. It's certainly time to get involved politically, regardless to your education levels, your economic levels. If you want to see change, you just gotta go for it. Look at what happened in Oakland. Politics just shifted and shaped up with some of the new people that got elected. And so politics can be useful if we utilize it right. And we got to make sure that we inspire our folks to be a part of the political conversations.
Man, very powerful. We definitely have to do it. And I'm going to take a step forward. We need all accountability for people in our community. We need accountability for our elected officials. We need accountability for our nonprofit leaders, our executive directors. I mean, we got to start holding everybody in community involved as well, because it's too much of this. We just point at one side, and we got to hold ourselves accountable as well. And that starts with each one of us holding people, different individuals, the OGs, the young Gs, the community leaders, as well as our elected officials. And I think it starts with all of us checking each other from the neck up, man. And I think that's important. I'm glad you said that. Brother Charles, you want to go ahead and say something real quick?
Accountability breeds responsibility, man. That's how I walk, man. I mean, there's no way in the world for me to give back to my neighborhood, to the community at whole, to all those that's coming through the system that cross my path. I have to walk it the way I talk it. I can't ask them to change if I'm not doing my part when it comes to change. And I'm leading by example. So I don't just, that's why I say I can't do no group on no curriculum. The curriculum is not talking about us, where we come from. It's not talking about the real time stuff that they going through. Like the situation that just happened in Oakland, one of my mentees and one of the guys that's in my group called and said, man, the young guy, I think his name is Streets, I think. I mean, he said he rolled by. I mean, it's so much stuff going on that a lot of my guys are coming in cross with, and somehow, some way, they finding their way not being in it, and they instantly give me a call. It's like, Chuck, man, do you know how close I was to being in a situation that, man, wouldn't have been cool at all? And I say, you know what? You making a phone call to me constantly shows me that you learning. You learning not to be in places or places around people where you shouldn't be, because at the end of the day, it's about him as an individual making it home, to be with his kids. We can't stop what's going on around us, but we have to do our part at home first. And if he's not in the way, he's not the problem. So I constantly stay on them about being accountable for their actions, man. And if you get in trouble, I'm gonna be there for you, but I let them know firsthand what it's gonna look like when you get in there. Jason, no, when we went through, we was babies. We grown men today, and to be able to look back, I mean, man, I get teary eyed because at the end of the day, I didn't want to have to go through that experience, but going through that experience put me in a situation that helped the youngsters that I come in contact with today. And because of that, I got both feet in, man. I mean, to run a business, to be married and take care of a big family, and to do all the stuff outside of that, I'm full every day.
Man, very powerful, my brother. I love and respect you. I commend you for the things that you're doing. That's what it's about, community. We can't never give up. Sometimes it takes 3, 4, 5 times for them to get it right, but we got to keep plugging along. That's what I do with my young people. Sometimes they get out and they come back to jail. I can't never. I get upset with them, but I understand what they go through. But we can never give up on anybody. You never know when that light switch is going
At all,
to come.
exactly,
I always
exactly.
tell them, we got to take the chains off our brains, and we got to be willing to be open to learn and listen to really impact. So just want to thank all you guys for coming on. A couple of you guys, if you want to come on next week, I think we have a few slots. If you're interested, you're definitely welcome to come back. We're just going to keep on doing this because these conversations in our community has to be taking place more often than not. We got to hold our elected officials to the fire and make sure that they are doing the things that they need to do to get us to where we need to be, as well as we have to do the work on our end to make sure that everything is happening in place. So with that being said, just want to thank everybody for tuning in. This Tuesday, we're going to have another segment of our hidden gems. You guys know every Tuesday, we highlight Black and brown businesses, and we also highlight community leaders like these brothers on here and these sisters that was on here today. We highlight them. We give them their flowers. We give them their roses. We give them their homage while they're here on earth doing the work, because so many times this work is an endless work, and sometimes we don't get the credit. And I know for the people that's doing the work in this field, we don't be wanting it because we do it from the heart, but it's also good to highlight and promote those people. So this Tuesday, we'll have another hidden gem segment. And then Thursday, we'll kick off another one of our educational Thursday. You guys know here at Both Sides of Conversation, we are about intentionally educating our community, giving them the information, bridging that gap, and making sure they get the resources and information that's needed so that they can use that to advance, especially when it comes to this economic thing that we've been talking about today, closing these gaps with these inequities and these financial things that's keeping our community back, because financial justice is what we need, and universal income is a lot of things that we're going to need moving forward. But we got to equip ourselves with the tools, as Tony said, in the toolbox, to make sure we know how to deal with the stuff that we need to deal with when it comes to us. And then next Sunday, we'll have part 2 of this. We have some other individuals that's going to come on, some policymakers, some people that's helped write some bills to change some of the things that you have involved when you're impacted by prison. So we're going to keep this conversation going, and it's going to be powerful. We're going to continue to impact the community. Thank you guys for continuing to support us. Please go to our website. You guys know this platform here is steady growing. There's a lot of things that we need. Please continue to support us and donate, because what we're doing is for the community. It's not for one individual. This is a community thing. We're trying to uplift, make sure that the voices are getting heard, making sure that our narrative is being told in a way that everybody understands authentically. And we're going to keep doing that. So thank you guys for supporting us. We love you guys, and we will see you guys next week for part 2 of prison reform. Thank you, brothers Tony and Jason, for coming on. We love y'all. We see y'all from both sides of the conversation.
Thanks.